What's going on, guys? It's Nate Dog! And today, bringing you an update to my Paladin of Stendarr build for the Elder Scrolls Online Stonethorn patch. The update for this build brings a new look for tanks in the Elder Scrolls Online. It's now a hybrid build that combines the tank playstyle mixed with a DPS capabilities. So, stick around if you want to learn more. Cue that intro! Before we talk about the update, I just wanted to let you all know that the previous build is still legit. I personally was just looking for more out of it. I was looking for a little bit more damage output by a tank. Generally, the sets that a tank runs are meant to absorb damage and not give damage. A buddy of mine, Killer Styles, did ask me if there was a way for tanks to do a decent amount of damage. I said no right away, cause that's not what a tank does. Then, J-Dubs put out a video about medium armor tanks. So, I looked into it because a couple of the guys I play with were wondering if a tank in medium armor would actually work. So, I watched it, and I got an idea for my build. So, without further ado, let's dive into this build. Starting off with our character sheet. My character is sitting at 16,900 max magicka. Max health is at 39,900. Max stam at 22,900 with magicka recovery at 1,000. Health recovery at 1,100. And stam recovery at 1,100 on the front bar. On the back bar, magicka recovery is at 1,000. Health recovery is at 1,100. And stam recovery is at 1,100. If we lay this down and use this ability on our back bar, our stam recovery actually goes up to 1,200, and I believe also on the front bar it's at 1,200. On the front bar, our spell damage is sitting at 1,500 with spell critical at 13.6%. Weapon damage is sitting at 2,000 with 30% critical. Our spell resistance on the front bar is at 20,200 with physical resistance at 19,000 with a critical resistance of 1,300. In the Greymoor patch, every character now has a base rating of critical resistance at 1,300, so I do not have this for PvP content. This is PvE content. On our back bar, our spell damage is at 1,500 with spell critical at 13,000 or at 13.6%. Weapon damage drops down to 1,900 with still 30.1%. Spell resistance drops down to 18,900 with physical resistance at 17,700. If we were to buff up our guy on our front bar, our spell resistance is at 28,100. Physical resistance sits at 26,900 on the front bar. Back bar, our spell resistance is at 26,800, physical resistance at 25,600. Attributes, we end up putting all of our attributes into health. The reason for this is because in my guild, as a tank, if you're going to do trial content, you are required to have 40k health, which right now I have 39,900. I mean, I'm close to 40k health there, so no biggie there. You do not have to have your health all the way up at this amount. I just want to because I like to run trials, and the guilds won't let me run trials as a tank if I do not have a minimum health at that height. So that's why all my attributes are here. If you so desire, you can throw points into magicka and stam and all that, because your max health for most content in the game, for vet content, you as a tank, you only need roughly about 36,000 health. So you guys can mix and match things and attributes to wherever you guys feel more comfortable with it. I'm just letting you know that's what I run. Over into boons I am running the Lord boon. This increases my max health again for hitting that 40k that I need to run trials for my guild. You don't need it. If you so desire, you guys can actually get ones that increase your max stam, or if you guys want weapon damage, you guys can do those type of boons. Foods will get into that active effect later, but as you guys can see, Bewitched Sugar Skulls, we'll talk about that later in the build. So, starting off with the skills I have, we are going to start on the front bar. First ability we have is in the Adriatic Spear skill line. It is the first ability to unlock, starts off as Puncture Strikes. We then morph it to Biting Jabs. Before I go any further, I just want to let you know how I have my abilities set up. You do not have to have it the same way. This is the way I feel comfortable with it. If you want to switch where your abilities are, that is perfectly fine. Do so as you will. This is where I just prefer to put them. So, talking about Biting Jabs again. This strikes enemies 4 times in front of us with a spear, dealing 2,300 physical damage and an additional 893 physical damage to all other enemies in the area. It has an 8 by 6 meter radius, pretty much in front of us. And then each strike reduces the movement speed of the closest enemy by 40%, so it makes enemies move a little bit slower for 1 second. And when we activate it, we actually grant us Major Savagery, which increases our weapon critical rating by 2,100 for 8 seconds. So back on our character sheet, we have weapon critical at 30%. If we use Biting Jabs here, our weapon critical now goes up to 40%. So we're getting close to that 50% marker on a tank, which is not heard of very often, to hit almost 40 weapon critical on a tank. And this will last for 8 seconds of having that weapon critical increase by 10%. Next ability we have is in the Sword and Board skill line. It is the second ability to unlock, starts off as a low slash. We then morph it to Deep Slash. This has a range of 5 meters with a radius of 6 meters, which deals 4,700 physical damage to enemies and other nearby enemies. It also reduces the movement speed of all enemies by 30% for 4 seconds. This also afflicts all enemies hit by it with minor maim, so it reduces their damage done by 15% for 12 seconds. So when we hit enemies with this, we want to make sure we hit the cluster of enemies, so that way we get the most effect out of this, so we can reduce the amount of damage the enemies do to us and our DPS or healers in the group. Very useful skill that we should be using as a tank. Next ability that we have is down into the Fighters Guild skill line. It is the first ability to unlock, starts off as Silver Bolt. We then morph it to Silver Leash. This has a 22 meter range that ends up hooking and pulling enemies to us that can deal 3,800 physical damage and reduce the movement speed of 30% for 4 seconds. So yes, our first 3 abilities that we have, we're literally reducing this movement speed of the enemies that we end up pulling in, deep slashing, or using Biting Jabs. So we're going to kind of control how the fight is going. We're going to control where the enemy moves with these 3 abilities that we have here. Next ability that we have is still in the Fighters Guild skill line. It is the second ability to unlock, starts off as Circle of Protection. We then morph it to Turn Evil. This is a 5 meter radius that we cast on the ground that lasts for 20 seconds. This is a protective rune that grants us and our allies minor protection and minor endurance, so reduces the damage we take by 8% or our allies, and it also increases our stam recovery by 10%. So when you have your stam based DPS next to you, they're going to get stam recovery. You're also going to protect them so they don't take damage, and you're also going to get stam back. But also the big kicker here, why we end up using this, upon activation, enemies in the area are feared for 5 seconds. So this is our CC or crowd control, because Templars do not have a class ability that gives them a CC or a crowd control like a Dragon Knight does. Dragon Knight has Dark Talons that actually stops the enemy in place and keeps them there. So we end up using Turn Evil as our CC control. So now we have Turn Evil that is a CC control. We have a Silver Leash that pulls the enemies in and also reduces their movement speed. We have Deep Slash that reduces the enemy's damage they do by 15%, and we also reduce their movement speed by 30%. And we have Biting Jabs, so when we have all the mobs clustered together, we then use this biting jabs to then deal our damage and also reduce their movement speed by 40% for 1 second. So a lot of slowing the enemies down, controlling the fight. This is the main idea of a tank, and this is what I was aiming for, was trying to control how the fight goes by controlling where the enemies go and how fast they actually can get away from you. So moving on into the next ability that we have is back up into our sword and board skill line, or our one-handed and shield. It is the first ability to unlock. Starts off as puncture. We then morph it to pierce armor. This is a 5 range. This is a single target thing which we pierce an enemy, dealing 3,100 physical damage, and taunt them to attack us for 15 seconds. This is our main taunt that we're going to want to use on the enemies. Again, first thing you'll want to do is, in a group of mobs, use your turn evil to fear enemies for 5 seconds. In the 5-second duration, you'll want to then use your silver leash and pull the enemies towards you as much as you can. At 4 seconds, you'll want to then use deep slash to then reduce the damage that the enemy does to you and your teammates. And you can use biting jabs also to then deal damage out there, but pierce armor is going to make sure those bosses stick on you. So this is what we'll want to use as our main taunt, because the reason we use this as our main taunt, because when we use this affects enemies with major fracture and major breach, which reduces their physical resistance and spell resistance by 5,200 for 15 seconds. This is by lowering the physical and spell resistance for your DPS, the harder they're going to hit. Also, you're going to end up hitting harder too by reducing the physical and spell resistance. If you don't know much about resistance in a dungeon, in PVE content, every enemy in a dungeon has 18,200 physical and spell resistance. The lower you get that number, the harder your DPS are going to hit. So we reduce that 18,200 by 5,200 for 15 seconds. For stand-based DPS and Magicka DPS. So this is a very key thing to have, and this is why this is our main taunt for close and personal stuff. Over into our ultimate. This is one of our flex spots for our ultimate, but right now I have this one, which is found in the Adriatic Spear skill line. It starts off radial sweep. We then morph it to empowering sweep. This is an 8-meter radius around us that lasts for 6 seconds with a low cost of 60 ultimate. We deal 6,300 physical damage to all nearby enemies and an additional 3,000 physical damage every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. The duration of this is extended by 2 seconds for each enemy hit. We gain empowerment for the duration, increasing our damage of our light attacks by 40%. So just a nice little flavor thing there. So we're doing a little bit more damage when we're doing light attacks. So we can light weave with our biting jabs to end up doing a little bit more damage. Again, if you want to change it, you can. We can change this over into Dawn's Wrath if you want to, which you can have the Nova morph it then to Solar Disturbance, which has a 20-meter range that you can cast it out with an 8-meter radius that lasts 10 seconds with only a low cost of 200 ultimate that deals 2,800 Magicka damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. This also applies Major Main, reducing enemy damage done by 30%. And the Major Main also persists on the enemies who leave the Nova for 6 seconds. Allies can activate a synergy called Supernova that deals 6,200 Magicka damage to all enemies in the area and stuns them for 2.5 seconds. So we can have Major Main here and also apply Minor Main with our Deep Slash to really reduce the amount of damage the enemies do to us and group members. If you feel like you need a little bit more healing, we can then go with Remembrance here, which is in the Restoring Light skill line. Starts off as Rite of Passage. We then morph it to Remembrance. This has a 20-meter radius and lasts for 4 seconds with a low cost of 100 ultimate. This can heal us and nearby allies 5,100 or 5,500 health every 1 second for 4 seconds. We also gain Major Protection, reducing damage taken by 30% for 10 seconds. So if we use our Turn Evil ability, which gives us Minor Protection, which reduces damage we take by 8%. Then we get Major Protection if we're casting this on top of it if we're in our circle to take an additional 30% less damage. But the main reason we want to use this is healing if we are struggling with our health. It says you cannot move while channeling, and you gain immunity to all disabling effects. The thing is, you can actually move with this if you actually end up using a roll dodge or blocking type thing. But the thing is, when you do that, you actually stop your healing, so pretty much you lose your capabilities of healing, and you pretty much just lost your ultimate there. So a lot of times, people just stand still for this. Also, a really good one to use here, if you want to, is down in the one-handed and shield skill line, is Shield Wall. We then morph it to Shield Discipline. This lasts for 7.3 seconds with a low cost of 108. This will automatically block all attacks at no cost for 7.3 seconds. And our one-handed and shield abilities cost nothing while this effect persists. So if you really need to use Puncture or Deep Slash, this allows you to do it at no cost. Or if you have run trouble with cost reduction on your shield ability, if you find that you're blocking a lot and your stam's going down too much, this is a good one then for you to use. So, moving on over into our back bar, starting with the first ability that we have is in the Dawn's Wrath skill line. It is the third ability to unlock, starts off as Backlash. We then morph it to Power of the Light. This has a 28 meter range that lasts for 6 seconds. This, you'll see this sunlight that comes on enemies. As the sunlight happens, you deal 3,000 physical damage to them, and then you copy all their damage taken from us, not from our allies, only from us for 6 seconds, and release 20% of it back at them as additional physical damage to them. The max we can only copy is 13,700 damage for this. Targets are also affected with Minor Fracture and Minor Breach that reduces their physical and spell resistance by 1,300 for 9 seconds. So this can stack along with our Pierce Armor here to do a lot more damage. So by reducing physical and spell resistance, DPS is going to do more damage, and so we're going to do more damage. So this will end up stacking with our Power of the Light ability. Next ability that we have is in the Restoring Light skill line. It is the third ability to unlock, starts off as Cleanse Ritual. We then morph it to Extended Ritual. This slot here also is a flexible spot. If you want to, we can go with a different ability that I will talk about after this one. So this cleanses up to 5 harmful effects from ourselves immediately and heals us and nearby allies for 1,400 health every 2 seconds for 24 seconds. Allies in the area can activate Purify Synergy. That cleanses them of harmful effects and also heals them for 3,700 health. This is scaled off of our highest offensive stats, so very nice that it will scale off of our weapon damage and stuff. If you want to, you can use the third ability in the Restoring Light skill line. It starts off as Restoring Aura. I end up morphing it to Radiant Aura. For the reason on this is because this has a 28 meter radius and lasts for 20 seconds. This applies Minor Magic Steel to all enemies around us for 20 seconds. So every time we attack and end up doing damage, we restore 300 Magicka every 1 second when damaging. Also, while slotted, we gain Minor Fortitude, Minor Endurance, and Minor Intellect, increasing our health, stam, and Magicka recovery by 10%. If you want to, you can go with the other morph. The reason I go with this morph is because a lot of the players I play with are Magicka-based characters. So I felt it was my duty to end up giving my allies Magicka back by them actually doing their job and DPSing them and healing them. Because most of the time your healers are Magicka-based style. So this ends up helping the healer out. Not saying that all healers are Magicka-based, just majority of them end up being Magicka-based. So this is why I went with this morph. If you are running more stam-based characters, then I would probably say go with the other morph. Anyway, moving on to the next ability that we have is still in the Restoring Light skill line. It starts off as Rush Ceremony. We then morph it to Honor the Dead. This is a cone target. So when I'm talking about a cone, I'm talking about from your point where you're standing in a cone shape out to 28 meter range. You end up healing allies. You can heal yourself or wounded allies for 5,500 health. And if you heal anyone who is below the 75% health marker, you end up restoring 60% of this ability's cost over 6 seconds as magic cost. So the big hefty cost of 4,200 magicka, you end up getting 60% of that back if you end up healing somebody who is under 75% health. This is a very big thing to have and a very good thing to have. And that's why I end up going with this. If you want to, you can go over into the assault skill line and you can get vigor and morph it to resolving vigor. If you want to end up healing yourself with stam base, that's totally up to you. The choice is yours if you want to heal over 4 seconds 9,900 health. I just decided to go with honor the dead because that is my flavor with it. So that's what I choose. Anyways, moving on into the next ability that we have, still in the Restoring Light skill line. It is the 5th ability to unlock, starts off as Rune Focus. We then morph it to Restoring Focus. This lasts for 20 seconds. The rune grants us Major Resolve, increasing our physical resistance and spell resistance by 5,200. Also recover 240 stam every 1 second. When we stand within the rune, increase physical and spell resistance granted by 50%. That little section right there is just a little bit misleading. What it is basically when you are actually standing in it, you actually get 8% increase. So what happens is by just casting an ability here and moving out, we get actually Major Resolve here. If we actually stand within in this rune, we actually get Major Resolve plus an additional 8%. Here I can show you. We'll cast it here, move out of our circle, and our character's resistance is sitting at 24,200 for spell and 23,000 for physical. Now we cast it and I'm in it. You can see my spell resistance went up to 26,800 for spell and physical went up to 25,600. This is what we want to end up doing, is standing in a rune. The more we stand in the rune, the more resistance we're going to get. Next ability we have, I know shows our Pierce Armor, but that is not what we want. We actually want to go all the way down to the Undaunted skill line, and we actually want to use Inner Rage for this ability. The reason we want to use Inner Rage, which starts off as Inner Fire, we then morph it to Inner Rage. It is the 3rd ability here. It has a 28-meter range that you can actually have now a range taunt. This is very handy in some dungeons where, let's say, the Imperial City Prison, when you battle the Lord Warden, the final boss, what you have to do is you're gonna have to shade phase. And in the shade phase is you got 4 shades that you're gonna have to taunt as a tank, or you should taunt as the tank, so your DPS can survive better, and your healer as well. Now, if I end up just using Pierce Armor here, now I have to run around poking these or attacking them with Pierce Armor to get their attention. And by the time I get to the last one, I'm going to have to go back to the very first one I punctured and get him to make sure the taunt's on me. So you're wasting a bunch of stamina running places. You're wasting stamina to make sure everybody's taunting on you. Here, this is the magic cost taunt, and you can do it at a range. So that is why we end up using Inner Rage. Also, ranged allies can use a synergy called Radiant, which deals 5,200 magic damage over them for 3 seconds to the enemies, and then an additional 5,200 magic damage to them and other nearby enemies, so it helps that out there a little bit with damage output. Now the ultimate here I have is down in the Assault skill line. You do not have to have this one. I just like to use this one because this one helps out the DPS very much so, as long as with other people in your group. It starts off as Warhorn, we then morph it to Aggressive Warhorn. This has a 20-meter radius that lasts for 30 seconds with a low cost of 200. It starts off as 250, but I got things that line up that actually make this cost a little bit cheaper. So this increases our group's max magicka and max stam by 10% for 30 seconds. On top of it, us and our allies gain Major Force, which increases our critical damage by 15% for 10 seconds. So for the first 10 seconds that this Aggressive Warhorn is active, whenever we do critical damage, either us or our allies, it's going to increase the critical damage by 15%. Done. So this is what we're going to want to do. So, now we're done with skills. Now we go over our passives and where I end up putting our passives. Starting off all the way on top with the Adriatic Spear skill line. First passives we have is Piercing Spears. This increases our critical damage done by 10%, so this will stack with our Minor Force. And we also increase the damage done to blocking targets by 10%. Next passive we have is Spear Wall. We gain minor protection for 6 seconds, reducing damage taken by 8% when activating an Adriatic Spear ability. So most of the time on our front bar we have one here, so we're going to get minor protection if we do not lay down our turn evil abilities. Next passive we have is called Burning Light. When dealing damage with Adriatic Spear abilities 4 times in rapid succession, we can deal 3,500 physical damage or 2,400 magic damage to our targets, whichever one's higher. Since our physical damage is higher, that's the one we're going to end up doing. Last passive we have here is called Balanced Warrior. This increases our weapon damage by 6% and increases our spell resistance by 2,600, so this helps us be a little bit more tankier. Over in the Dondrath ability, first passive we have is called Enduring Ray. This increases the duration of our Sunfire, Eclipse, Solar Flare, and Nova abilities by 2 seconds. Yes, I know I don't currently have one of those abilities slotted, but if you so desire and do use a Nova, this is going to end up applying 2 more seconds to that ability, so that's why I have it unlocked. We have Prism. Whenever we cast a Dondrath ability while in combat, we generate 3 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds, so we do have one that we use. It is called our Power of Light, and if you look at duration there, it lasts for 6 seconds. So whenever you know this explodes, then you know it's time to cast another Power of Light to get your free 3 ultimate or your free 3 ultimate there. Next passive we have is Illuminate. Casting a Dondrath ability grants minor sorcery to us and our group members for 20 seconds, which increases our spell damage by 10%. So this is a very good thing why we end up casting a Dondrath ability, so we're giving everybody minor sorcery, so your Magicka based DPS or healer now gets a little bit more spell damage when you cast that. So that's why we want to at least have one Dondrath ability in this setup. Last passive we have in Dondrath is Restoring Spirit. This reduces our health, Magicka, and stam, and ultimate cost of our abilities by 5%. So this is why our ultimate seems a lot lower than normal compared to other. Like I said, the Warhorns generally sits at 250. I have it at 200. We're still going to get into it why it's ended up being that low. Over into Restoring Light. First passive we have here is Mending. This increases our healing effect from our Restoring Light abilities by 12% in proportion to the severity of the target's wound. So the lower your health is, technically, the more this ability is actually going to help you out. It's going to increase by 12% the lower your health is. So this is kind of, that's why our Honor of the Dead, this is why I use it, because it's kind of that, oh snap, we're going to die, let's heal up, and snap, hit that, we get this Mending passive then helps us out. Next passive we have is Sacred Ground. Whenever we're standing in a cleansing ritual, rune focus, or rite of passage area of effects, and up to 4 seconds after leaving them, we gain minor mending, increasing our healing done by 8%. So that is why I also use rune focus and also cleansing ritual, is because when we're standing in it, and cleansing rituals up to 12 meters, so that's a pretty good meter range where you can stand in it, walk around, and get minor mending, increase your healing done. So our oh snap heal does better, and we can actually heal group members better. Next passive we have is Light Weaver. When we heal an ally under 50% health with a Restoring Light ability, we grant them 2 ultimate, so you can give ultimate to your allies, which is a nice little thing. And when we channel Rite of Passage, we gain 33,000 physical and spell resistance, so we end up hitting cap, and we can use that to get more mitigation. Last passive here is Master Ritual. This increases our resurrection speed by 20%, so we end up resing allies a lot faster. So if you are the last person alive, you can get your allies up a little bit quicker than other people, especially being the Templar. When we resurrect an ally, they return with 100% more health, so they get more health when they come back, and It gives us a 50% chance to fill an empty soul gem after each successful resurrection. So you basically get a res off for pretty much a free res off without using a soul gem, which is a very nice thing to have. Over into the one-handed and shield skill line, starting off with the first ability we have is Fortress, which reduces the stamp cost of our one-handed and shield abilities by 15% and reduces the cost of our blocking by 36%. Next passive we have is Sword and Board. This increases our weapon damage by 5% and the amount of damage we can block by 20%, so now we're into blocking more damage. Deadly Bash, this improves our standard bash attack, causing them to deal 1,500 more damage and cost 40% less. The key thing here is you don't want to just hold block and end up smoking, standard bash attack, because yes, you're going to do some damage there, but you're going to run out of stamina. You only really use your standard bash when an enemy is channeling and they have red flares poking out of them. That is the point when we want to bash our enemies. Next passive we have then here is Deflective Bolt. This increases the amount of damage we can block from projectiles and range attack by 14%, so making us a lot more tankier when we are blocking. And last one we have here is Battlefield Mobility, which reduces the movement speed penalty of bracing by 36%. And bracing in the game is when you're holding your shield and you have that symbol in front of you, that is bracing. So we end up moving 36% quicker, even though we're bracing. Going down into armor, I am wearing a 5-1-1 ratio. Surprisingly, this is a medium armor tank build. So I'm wearing a 5 medium, 1 heavy, 1 light. Reasons for that is coming later in the passives, but these are the passives I end up using. In light armor, we end up using the top 3 because this is where we only benefit. We get Grace here, which reduces effectiveness of snares applied to us by 4% and reduces the cost of sprint by 3%. Advocate increases our magic recovery by 4% and reduces the magic cost of our abilities by 2%. Spell Ward, this increases our spell resistance by 363. And Prodigy and Concentration we do not get because we are not wearing 5 pieces or more of light armor. In the medium armor skill line, we have Dexterity, which increases our weapon critical rating by 1,600. We have Windwalker, which increases our stamina recovery by 20% and reduces the stamina cost of our abilities by 10%. Improve Sneak, if you really want to, you can throw this on. I just don't really care for it because for me I'm not really sneaking around, so I don't use it. But if you want to, you guys can go ahead and throw points into here. This is a spot. Since we are wearing 5 pieces of medium armor, we can use Agility here, which increases our weapon damage by 15%. Athletics, this is not a 5-piece bonus, so you can get this even if you are wearing 5 pieces of light or heavy. So this increases our movement speed bonus of sprint by 15% and reduces the cost of roll dodge by 20%. In heavy armor, yes, I know I got a lot of passives here and I even got an active ability, but we can only use the top 3. So we can use Resolve, which increases our physical and spell resistance by 362. Constitution, which increases our health recovery by 4, and we restore 108 magic and stamina whenever we take damage for each piece of heavy armor equipped. And this effect can only occur once every 4 seconds. And then we have Juggernaut, which increases our max health by 2%. We do not get Retelevised and we do not get Rapid Mending because those require 5 pieces there. Over into World, I do have ability in Soul Magic. I have the passive Soul Summons. This allows us to revive once every 1 hour without spending a Soul Gem, so we can save on Soul Gems for resing allies. And then again, being the Templar, we have that 50% chance that we do not use a Soul Gem on an ally. So end up using Soul Summon for this purposes. Save us on Soul Gems. Save you guys on money. Fire Guild ability. We have the first passive here called Intimidating Present. This allows us to intimidate NPCs in conversation. So for questing purposes, this is where intimidating helps for intimidating NPCs. Also, this reduces our stamina cost of our Fire Guild ability by 15%, which is very nice because we end up using Turn Evil a lot and our Silver Leash to pull allies. We have Slayer here, which increases our weapon damage by 3% for each Fire Guild ability slot. On our back bar, we have none, but on our front, we have 2, so that gives us 6%. Banish, we then have Banish of the Wicked. We generate 9 ultimate when we kill an undead, Daedra, or werewolf. There are a ton of undead, Daedra, and werewolf in the game or in dungeons, and undead also includes vampires out there as well. When you're a tank, you're not going to end up killing them. We have a good chance to actually end up killing them, and actually how this build is set up, we actually do have a decent amount of weapon damage and a decent amount of crit chance, so chances are we actually might get a kill on these guys more than often than not. So that is why we want this passive as well, to get the 9 ultimate there. Skill Tracker, our Fire Guild ability deal an additional 20% damage to Undead, Daedra, and Werewolf. We do have that with Silver Leash, does damage, so that will deal an additional 20% damage. That's why we have Skilled Tracker. Over in the Mages Guild, we just have Persuasive Will here. This is just allowing us to persuade NPCs in conversations for questing purposes only. Over into the Undaunted, these are 2 very important passives to get. Undaunted Command allows us, when activating an ally synergy, we restore 4% of our max health, stamina, and magicka, so we get 1,500 health, we get 918 stam, and 678 magicka back whenever we activate a synergy. Good for sustaining there. Then we have Undaunted Metal. This increases our max health, stamp, and magicka by 2% per piece of armor worn. So we at least have to wear 1 piece of heavy, 1 piece of medium, 1 piece of light in order to get this bonus. So since we're at least wearing 1 of each of those, we get 6% there increase to our max health, stamp, and magicka. For race, I am the Imperial race on this tank slash DPS hybrid build. You do not have to play a tank or an Imperial, I should say, if you don't want to. You can play any race, but just keep in mind, if you do change the race, things are going to change. Your stats probably won't look the same, and so on and so forth. Any race can tank. I'm just saying the stats that I have on this guy will not match if you change the race to anything else besides the Imperial. You might have to change your attributes around, you might have to change a little bit of skills around, might even have to change sets around to get kind of the same output. But anywho, we go with the Imperial because we, for flavor wise, increase our gold gain by 1%, and as a Paladin of Stendarr, I feel like I have that holy type thing, and we're kind of this noble knight, so basically in D&D you kind of always had those guys who got gold gain by 1%, so I figured why not play the Imperial, so that's why I play the Imperial. As the Imperial though, we get Toughness, which increases our max health by 2,000. We have Imperial Metal, that increases our max stam by 2,000. And then for Red Diamond passive here, this reduces the cost of all of our abilities by 3%. So that's health abilities, magicka abilities, stam abilities, and ultimate abilities. This is also now why our ultimate cost is lower. Like I said, if you pick any other race out there, your ultimate cost might go up. You might have to change things around. You might have to do things different if you change your race. You guys can do any race, but this is the race I chose to do. I just want to really emphasize any race can play any role, even hybrid roles. But anywho, continuing with the Red Diamond passive, when we deal direct damage, you heal yourself for 333, and you also restore 333 magicka and stamp. This can occur once every 5 seconds whenever we deal direct damage, so this is also helping us with our sustainability. Over into crafting, you will want to get your alchemy all the way up because you will want to get medicinal use. Whenever we use a potion's results effects last 30% longer. So whenever we use a potion, let's say we get minor intellect with it, at base, without 3 points into this, at base, that will only last for roughly 35 seconds at base. Well, with this on, our potions on that for minor intellect that we get now last for 47.5 seconds. Potion cooldowns in the game have a 45-second cooldown, so we'll have a 100% uptick time with it, so that's why we want to use medicinal use. So get medicinal use as fast as you can. This is one of the most important passives in the game, so get it. Next passive we have is down in provisioning. I end up using Gourmet because it adds 20 minutes to the duration of any eaten food I use. If you are not going to use any eaten food and you are going to use a drink, then I would say you need to get Connoisseur. This will add 20 minutes to the duration of any consumed drink if you put 3 points out of 3 here. Since I use food, I use Gourmet. So, now going over in what I am currently wearing. Starting off with slottable items that we are running. For consumables, we have the Bewitched Sugar Skulls. This increases our max health by 4,600, max stam, and max magicka by 4,200, and increases our health recovery by 462 for 2 hours. This is why our health recovery seemed a little high compared to other builds out there, is because we have a health recovery on our consumable. Do you have to run this food? No, you don't have to run this food. If you want to, you can run Mud Ball, which just increases your max stam and max magicka, because at base, this tank's sitting health is roughly at that 36k marker. I just run Bewitched Sugar Skulls because I like to get that health recovery. I like the more health, more max stam and magicka that gives. Mud Ball gives you more stam and magicka than this does. But I have to hit 40k, and this allows me to hit that 40k marker to do those trials. So that's what I run. For potions, I run the Crown Tri Restoration Pots, which restore 8,300 health and gives me 7,500 magicka and stam immediately. This grants Major Fortitude, Major Intellect, and Major Endurance, which increases our health, magicka, and stam recovery by 20% for the 47.3 seconds, with potion cooldown at 45 seconds. This is where medicinal use comes into effect, and that's why you will want to get it, because potions last longer than your cooldown does. If you do not have your hands on this potion, Tri-Stat works effectively. If you just want to run just a health potion, you can run just a health potion or a magicka potion or just a stam, or combination of health stam, health magicka, magicka and stam, whatever choices are there are yours. I just prefer tripods is what I prefer. Now, going over into the gear, starting on our front bar, I am running the Mace of the Dragon with the Crusher enchantment. This will reduce target's physical and spell resistance by 800 for 5 seconds. So, we have Power of the Light, which reduces enemies' physical and spell resistance by 1,320. We have Pierce Armor. If we apply it on the same target as Power of Light, that now reduces target's physical and spell resistance by an additional 5,280, so that gives us 6,600. And now if this would proc, we now add 811 to that can stack with it. So Crusher enchantment, this is why it's on our main bar and our main offensive bar. We also have Defending, which increases our physical and spell resistance by 1,500. This is a trait I prefer because I like to get my resistances up there a little bit higher, since I am running medium armor. But if you feel comfortable running your resistance a little lower, even though you're on medium armor, you can use different traits. Decisive is a good one for more ulti-gen. You got Infused to increase our Crusher enchantment if you so desire. Choices there are yours. So anyways, this is part of the Activary Dragon Guard set. For 2 pieces, we add 124 magicka recovery. 3 pieces, we add 4% healing taken, so more healing done to us. For 4 pieces, we get 1,100 max health. And for 5 pieces, we add 152 health recovery. This also applies with our Bewitched Sugar Skulls. That's why our health recovery is a little higher. And also, on top of the 5-piece bonus, this reduces the cost of our ultimate abilities by 15%. This is why it is so low. We have the Activary Dragon Guard that reduces it by 15%. We are an Imperial that reduces it by 5%. And then we have Dawn's Wrath ability passive that also reduces it by an additional 3%. Or vice versa. I think actually the Imperial one reduces it by 3%. I'd have to go back and look, but that's why. In total, it's a bunch of ultimate reduce. That's why we're able to cast more Warhorns, give our allies more minor force in the fights. Anywho, going over into our shield that we're wearing, since we are doing a sword and board build, I end up going with the max stam enchantment on this to add 800 maximum stam with the sturdy trait to reduce the cost of block by 4%, just to help out with cost block. Since we're on this bar a lot, we may be blocking on this bar often too. Since we're on this bar a lot, this is part of the Akaviri Dragon Guard set. On the back bar, we are running the Weakening Enchantment. This reduces target's weapon and spell damage by 174 for 5 seconds. Yes, it's a little low cost, and yes, it may not matter much, but on top of our minor main, reducing the weapon damage that the enemies do to our allies, on top of this, this helps out a little bit, even though it's a low 174. It may not seem much, but things add up and help out. We have the power trait on this to increase our healing done. Since we want our O Snap heal powerful, this is why I want the power trait. If you want to change it, like I said on the last one, you can change the trait. That's up to you. This is still part of the Akaviri Dragon Guard set here as well. The shield here is also part of the Akaviri Dragon Guard set. I want max stam enchantment on this because I didn't want my stam to spike when I went from one bar to the other or drop, vice versa, so I end up putting stam on both bars so that way it stayed consistent across it. We went the reinforced trait just to increase the item's armor value, since we didn't go defending on this weapon, because you cannot get defending on your shield, so that's why we end up going reinforced. And I wanted power to increase healing done because you can't get increased healing done on your shields since it's an armor piece. So moving on, this is part of the Akaviri Dragon Guard set, so just letting you all know. For our monster helm, we are running the Tremor scale with the max stam enchantment on this, increasing stam by 900 with the infused trait to give us a little bit more boost into that. The Tremor scale set adds 1000 max stam, and for 2-piece bonus of it, when we activate a taunt ability, which we have 2 of them, an enemy, we cause a Dune Ripper to burst from the ground beneath them after 1 second, dealing 7,800 physical damage to all enemies within 4 meters and reduce their physical resistance by 2,300 for 8 seconds. So this stacks with all the other physical resistance. This is not spell and physical resistance, it's just physical, so reducing the physical. So, since we are a stam base and kind of a stam based DPS, we are actually going to benefit from this build a lot more. I did say earlier, I have more Magicka based DPS in my guild, but they have things ready to help them out. I'm already helping them out, so I figured I'd do more physical, reduce physical resistance to help myself out, do more damage, so that way we can be that hybrid tank DPS build. If people in my group would be more stam based, then they would also benefit from this as well. Every single time we taunt, we'll end up reducing enemies' physical resistance by 2,300, and it can stack with the other abilities that we have, and this can occur once every 8 seconds. Okay, moving on over into the chest. This is our heavy piece set, since this is a crafted set. This is the Ancient Dragon Guard set. We want max Magicka here just to get our Magicka up a little bit higher for healing purposes with the reinforced trait, because in medium armor, you do not have a lot of resistance if we end up doing different traits. So a lot of this, you'll want to go reinforced if you want to stick with medium armor. If you want to, you can do this build in heavy armor, but you will not get the same damage output as I do because I'm running more medium armor on this build. So, this is part of the Ancient Dragon Guard set. For 2 pieces of this, we get 1,100 max health. 3 pieces, we get 124 weapon and spell damage, and for 4 pieces, we get 804 weapon and spell critical. For 5 pieces, this gives us 289 weapon and spell damage at purple quality. If this was gold, it'd be 300. While our health is above 50%. So while our health is above 50%, we end up doing more damage. The nice thing about now, since we are now medium armor based and we don't get that physical and spell resistance, is whenever we fall below that 50% health marker, we actually get 3,300 physical and spell resistance when our health falls below 50%. So if we change one of our skills over here real quick, we are going to switch it to Overflowing Altar to get our health below our marker. So we're going to go with this, and then we're going to get our health below 50%. Bear with me because this may take some time. Get below that 50% marker. Okay, now on our front bar, our spell resistance is sitting at 31,500, physical at 30,300. Now on our back bar, our spell resistance is at 30,200 and physical resistance at 29,000. So, the lower our health is, the more tankier this build becomes, and this is in medium armor. This is the medium armor build, and you literally have 30k resistance about on both bars when your health falls below 50% health. Just ridiculous, insane to have 30k resistance on a medium armor tank build. So, moving on, shoulders. This is part of the Tremor skill set. We went max Magicka to get our Magicka up there a little bit, and we went the infused trait with this. You can do more reinforced, you can go sturdy here. I just like to infuse to give us a little bit more Magicka based. Waist, we want max Stam enchantment with the Ancient Dragon Guard set with reinforce, and you will want reinforce on all the rest of the pieces with the waist, hands, legs, and feet. The hands and feet here, we end up going max health because I needed to get my health up to that 40k marker. You guys don't, so I would probably recommend then going to the Stam for these health ones. For these health enchantments, change them to Stam if you don't need 40k health. But if you like 40k health and like how this build is set up, then keep your max enchantment health here on your feet and hands. For the legs, we went then to max Stam because this is a bigger piece, so we benefit better here. Yes, you would benefit better from health here, but I really like how my bar is looking at the bottom there. You got 17k health that is shown, or Magicka that is shown. You got 40k health shown. You got 23k Stam shown. Granted, yes, I know I was talking about it earlier, that in the character sheet, it's not actually there, but it's very close as you can see. That's what I like about it. It's pretty even across the board. That is why things are sitting where they are at. Over into accessories. For the ring, this is part of the Activary Dragon Guard set. This will finish up our 5 pieces on here. For the neck, we end up going Magicka Recovery, just to keep our Magicka up there. With Healthy Trait, again, to hit that 40k. And then with the rings, I end up going with Stam Recovery because we are using a lot of Stam abilities, so keeping our Stam Recovery up is very important as well since we use it for blocking. Now, going into champion points, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, I am at champion 804. I'm almost to the 810 marker, but yet this build still does very well. If you guys need more info on where to put champion points at certain levels, let me know. I will try to help you out. But starting in the champion points, we're going to start in the green tree here at the tower. We have 56 points into Warlord. This reduces the cost of Break Free by 20%. We have Sprinter, which 9 points into Sprinter, which reduces the cost of Sprint by 6%. Bash Focus, we got 21 points in here, reduce the cost of Bash by 13%. Over into Lever, we have 43 points into Tenacity. This increases our Stam of our fully charged heavy attacks restored by 10%. I didn't say Magicka because we do not have a staff that gives us Magicka, so we are only getting Stam back with this. Over into the Shadow, we have 60 points into Tumbling. This reduces the cost of our roll dodge by 20%, almost 21 if I put more points into it. But it does not round up, it rounds down, so this is at 20%. We have 76 points into Shadow Ward. This reduces the cost of block by 23%. Since we do not have a lot of our traits sturdy, this is a very important place to end up putting them. Over into our damage tree, we have no points put into the Apprentice whatsoever. Over in the Atronach, we have 14 points into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases our damage of our light and heavy attacks with our one-handed and shield abilities. We have 66 points into Master at Arm. This increases our damage done with direct damage attacks by 22%. We have Thaumaturge in the Ritual. We have 66 points into that. This increases our damage done with damage over time effects by 22%. Piercing Strikes, we have 48 points into this. This increases our critical damage and critical heal by Stam abilities by 18%. So this is where our Vigor would come into play to increase our have a better chance of crit healing us. But like I said, I went with Honor of the Dead. That's my choice in flavor of this build that I set up. Anywho, we have 6 points into Piercing. This increases our physical penetration by 614. We have 64 points into Mighty. This increases our physical, poison, and disease damage done by 13%. Now, in the red tree, this is our defensive area. The red is defensive. So we have 67 points into Ironclad. This reduces our damage taken against direct damage attacks by 22%. We put 19 points into Medium Armor Focus here just to increase our physical resistance by 1,800. So that way we get a little bit closer to our spell resistance. And since we are a light armor tank build, the more resistance we have, the better we are going to be able to tank on our medium armor build. Over into the lady, we have 56 points into Thick Skin. This reduces damage taken from damage over time effects by 20%. And 56 points also into Hardy and Elemental Defender, which reduces, in Hardy, we reduce the damage taken from physical, poison, and disease damage by 12. Elemental is anything that's Flame, Frost, Shock, or Magical damage base. So, if you did not know, Thick Skin actually stacks with Elemental Defender or Hardy. If it's a damage taken from damage over time effect that is magical based, then it stacks with Elemental Defender. If it's physical, disease, or poison damage, then it stacks with Hardy. Same goes with Ironclad. If it's a damage taken from any direct damage attacks that is spell or magic based, then you stack Ironclad with Elemental Defender. If it's anything direct damage that is physical, then you stack with Hardy. So direct damage, Ironclad stacks with this and this. If it's area of effect, it stacks with Hardy and Elemental Defender, depending on what it is again. Moving on into the Lord, we have 11 points into Quick Recovery. This increases our healing received by 3% since we are a medium armor base. And why do we have 11 points into here? Because we just want to make sure we get Field Physician, because whenever we resurrect another player, our damage taken is reduced by 15%, and that helps out, especially if we end up being the tank. We might be the last person alive, so we need to make sure when we res somebody, we reduce the damage taken from us. So, there you guys have it for the Paladin of Stendarr update for Stonethorn patch. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys would, come support my channel. You guys can follow me on YouTube. You guys can also follow me on Twitch. I stream regularly dungeon dailies with this build and other builds. If you guys could, you guys can also subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking that subscribe button, smashing that notification bell, so that way you guys can stay up to date with this build or any other of my content I drop on my channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.